The night is heavy, silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the soft glow of a towering glass building ahead. Ethan sits motionless in his car, hands resting on the steering wheel, knuckles tight but controlled. The corporate tower reflects city lights like a cold mirror, beautiful, untouchable, and hostile. This is where power lives. Inside that building is Claire's phone, glowing somewhere above him, a small digital signal mocking his certainty. She told him she'd be home by 8. It's past 10. Ethan isn't angry yet. He's worse than that. He's calculating, observing, trying to convince himself there's a rational explanation. But the longer he waits, the more the silence screams. The building doesn't feel like a workplace anymore. It feels like a fortress. Ethan realizes, without evidence and without words, that something in his life has shifted. And once something shifts, it and the dashboard screen lights up softly, breaking the darkness inside the car. A message preview appears. Just one line, incomplete, cruel in its ambiguity. We need to discuss what I expect in return. Ethan doesn't touch the screen. He doesn't need to. His chest tightens as his mind races through possibilities he doesn't want to name. The words feel transactional, cold, and deliberate, written by someone used to leverage, used to taking. Suddenly, memories rearrange themselves into something uglier. Claire flinching when her phone buzzes, conversations dying mid-sentence, sleeves pulled down even in warm rooms. These weren't stress signs. They were shields. Ethan feels dread settle in, not explosive, but slow and suffocating. He still doesn't know what's happening, but he knows who has the power. And he knows Claire doesn't. The imbalance becomes unbearable because it is invisible, hidden behind corporate titles and polite smiles. Ever truly goes back, Claire finally exits the building. She walks like someone holding herself together by habit alone, shoulders stiff, steps measured, eyes unfocused. Ethan notices everything. The way she avoids looking at the car. The pause before opening the door. When she sits beside him, the space between them feels wider than the entire city. Her eyes are glassy, her voice stripped of warmth, as if emotion has been rationed. She doesn't explain. She doesn't apologize. She only says, "I can't quit. Not yet." Those 3 words confirm everything without revealing anything. Ethan understands this isn't about ambition. It's about survival. About consequences she's already seen. The danger isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, systemic, and protected. This moment plants the central question in the audience's mind. If the system is against them, how far will Ethan go to dismantle it without losing Claire, or himself? Ethan and Claire didn't start with comfort or certainty. Their early years were lived in a cramped apartment with flickering lights and second-hand furniture, where dreams were louder than money. They planned futures on the floor, sharing takeout and belief in equal measure. When Ethan's career collapsed, an investment firm failure that left him unemployed and ashamed, Claire became the anchor. She worked longer hours, reassured him quietly, never once treating him like a burden. That season bonded them in sacrifice. But time reshapes gratitude into imbalance. Now the roles have reversed, and Ethan feels the shift like a bruise to his identity. Claire is the one with momentum, authority, and confidence the world rewards. Ethan loves her deeply, but pride complicates devotion. Every promotion she earns reminds him of what he lost. Their love remains, but it's strained by unspoken insecurity, making honesty harder than hardship ever was. Victor Hale's company is known for excellence the way storms are known for rain, inevitable and unforgiving. It's elite, polished, and obsessed with image. Claire's rise within it has been swift enough to spark whispers. Promotions came without clear explanations, praise without transparency. Mentorship becomes the word people use when they don't dare say more. Ethan notices the changes before he names them. Claire growing guarded, rehearsing conversations, carrying exhaustion deeper than workload can justify. He feels himself shrinking beside her success, replaced not by another man, at least not yet, but by a system he doesn't understand. His fear isn't just betrayal, it's irrelevance. Ethan's flaw emerges here. He believes silence is support, that not asking questions proves trust. But silence doesn't protect love, it delays truth. And delayed truth gathers interest, compounding damage while pretending to be patience. Victor Hale enters the story before he ever appears on screen. His name alone carries weight, spoken with admiration in public, lowered voices in private. He's a visionary executive, celebrated in interviews for leadership and innovation, his smile practiced and disarming. Employees praise his standards, but fear his attention. Stories circulate in fragments, careers fast-tracked, others quietly erased. No accusations, just patterns no one documents. Ethan knows Victor only through reputation, but reputation is enough. It explains why leaving isn't simple. Victor's power isn't brute force, it's structural. He controls access, narrative, and consequence. For Claire, walking away wouldn't just mean losing a job, it would mean being labeled ungrateful, unstable, or worse. This makes the eventual betrayal more painful, because it's not born from desire, but coercion. The audience understands now, escape has a cost, and staying has a price. The truth doesn't come out all at once. It leaks. Claire sits across from Ethan in the dim kitchen light, hands folded too tightly, eyes fixed on a point just past him. When she finally speaks, her voice is barely there, measured, exhausted, stripped of hope. Victor didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten openly. He framed everything as opportunity. Emotional submission disguised as loyalty. Private dinners presented as mentorship. Expectations implied but never written down. And beneath it all, the threat. Her promotion vanishes, her name quietly poisoned, her future erased without a trace. Claire explains how the rules were never spoken because they didn't need to be. Power filled the gaps. As she talks, Ethan realizes this wasn't a moment. It was a slow tightening trap. Claire didn't fall into it. She was guided, praised, cornered. By the time she understood the cost, escape had already been priced beyond her reach. There is one sentence Claire hesitates before saying, as if once spoken it cannot be taken back. When it finally comes, it lands softly and destroys everything. He said it was the cost of ambition. The words hang in the air, heavy with shame that doesn't belong to her. Ethan hears what Victor meant. That success isn't earned, it's extracted. That women don't rise, they're allowed to ascend, conditionally. Claire explains how she tried to justify it at first, how she told herself enduring discomfort was temporary, that resilience was part of growth. But the price kept changing. The boundaries kept moving. Each concession made the next demand easier to justify. This is the true betrayal, not of marriage, but of dignity. Ethan doesn't feel rage yet. He feels grief. For the version of Claire who believed hard work was enough. For a system that teaches silence as professionalism, Ethan doesn't shout. He doesn't pace or clench his fists. He goes very still. Something inside him clicks, not loudly, but permanently. The jealousy he feared never arrives, because this was never about another man. It was about power weaponized against silence. About abuse disguised as opportunity. In that moment, Ethan understands his greatest flaw, waiting. Believing that patience was protection. That loyalty meant not asking questions. That love meant trusting systems to be fair. He sees now that silence isn't neutral, it's permission. This realization doesn't turn him violent. It turns him precise. The fear drains out, replaced by clarity. Ethan knows the rules Victor plays by, and for the first time, he stops thinking like a victim. This is the pivot of the story. The status quo shatters quietly. Ethan doesn't declare war, but he commits to it. And intent, once formed, is impossible to undo. Ethan doesn't confront Victor. He doesn't warn Claire about a plan. He does something far more dangerous. He watches. He begins logging patterns the way he once studied markets, noticing timing, pressure points, and behavior that repeats because it works. He tracks Victor's late-night messages, the cadence of urgency, the way deadlines always arrive just before board meetings or performance reviews. Ethan researches quietly, digging through sealed settlements, corporate rumors, and careers that ended without explanation. He finds NDAs filed like gravestones, unnamed, undisputed, permanent. Each discovery strips away illusion and replaces it with structure. This isn't chaos. It's a system. Ethan's restraint becomes his shield. Every night, he sits alone, assembling a private map of Victor's power. The tension here isn't action, it's anticipation. The audience understands Ethan is moving, but no one knows how fast or how far. And that uncertainty is its own kind of danger. While Ethan builds structure, Claire unravels. Guilt settles into her bones, heavy and constant. She fears she's complicit, not because she wanted this, but because she didn't stop it soon enough. Victor's messages escalate, losing their polite disguise. Timelines appear. Expectations sharpen. His manipulation turns psychological, praising her resilience while questioning her loyalty. He isolates her with subtlety, warning her that outsiders wouldn't understand, that exposure would destroy more than it saves. Claire begins to doubt herself, her strength, her judgment, her worth. Worse, she fears Ethan's gaze. Not anger, but disappointment. She's terrified he'll see her as weak, not trapped. Every interaction becomes layered with dread. At work, she performs excellence. At home, she fractures. Victor doesn't need to shout. He applies pressure the way gravity works, constant, invisible, inevitable. The audience feels the squeeze tightening, knowing something will eventually give. The worst part isn't fear, it's isolation. Ethan can't tell friends without risking gossip that could destroy Claire's career before Victor ever has to act. The police are not an option yet. There's no clean evidence, only implication and power. Every night, the pressure builds inward. Ethan carries it in silence, knowing one wrong move could trigger retaliation. Claire withdraws, mistaking protection for distance. Their home becomes quiet, not peaceful, fragile. The audience watches two people trying to survive a threat they can't name publicly. No explosions. No confrontations. Just the slow decay of safety. This is the stretch that tests endurance. The tension isn't about what happens. It's about how long it can continue without collapse. The purpose is clear. When action finally comes, it must feel earned. Because by now, the audience isn't waiting for revenge. They're waiting for relief. The final piece clicks into place quietly, the most terrifying way possible. Ethan uncovers records that don't scream scandal, but whisper repetition. Settlements sealed behind airtight NDAs. Career exits framed as personal decisions. One name appears again and again in footnotes and legal shadows. A woman who didn't just leave Victor's company, but vanished from the industry entirely. No LinkedIn trail. No references. No recovery. This wasn't a one-time abuse of power. It was systemic. Designed. Optimized. Ethan realizes Victor didn't rely on fear alone. He relied on isolation and disbelief. Each victim thought she was alone. That was the trick. The audience feels the shift here. This isn't about saving Claire anymore. It's about exposure. Ethan understands that silence was never just personal. It was structural. And structures don't fall from confrontation. They fall from light. The twist lands hard because it reframes everything that came before as part of a machine built to erase women quietly. The confrontation doesn't happen in an office. It happens under chandeliers. A corporate gala, polished and loud with praise, where Victor stands smiling, certain of his invincibility. He believes power protects him here. Ethan doesn't approach him. He doesn't need to. Instead, the takedown unfolds in layers, timed with precision. Evidence is released while speeches are still being applauded. Journalists receive documents mid-event. The board is alerted before dessert is served. Screens across the room light up with breaking news alerts. A federal inquiry is triggered not by accusation, but by documentation, patterns, dates, signatures. Victor's smile fades slowly as he realizes this isn't rumor. It's collapse. The psychological strike is clean. Victor is forced to stand still while his reputation dissolves in public, powerless to stop it. The audience gets satisfaction not from shouting, but from inevitability. Justice arrives dressed as consequence. The final and most powerful act doesn't belong to Ethan. It belongs to Claire. When the moment comes, she steps forward, not trembling, not apologetic. She speaks publicly, calmly, with clarity earned through pain. She doesn't dramatize. She names behavior. Patterns, power, silence. By speaking, she breaks the spell Victor depended on. Her voice becomes permission for others to come forward, turning isolation into collective truth. Ethan watches from the side, not as a savior, but as a witness, exactly where he belongs. This is the true power shift. Claire reclaims authorship of her own story, transforming shame into testimony. The audience feels release here, not revenge, but restoration. The system that tried to erase her is forced to record her instead. The climax resolves without violence because violence was never the point. Control was. And control, finally, changes hands. The fallout is swift but messy, the way real consequences always are. Victor resigns first, framed as personal reasons, but the facade doesn't last. Indictments follow. Headlines sharpen. Federal charges make silence impossible. The company scrambles, issuing statements that acknowledge nothing while promising everything. Internally, Panic replaces loyalty. Former employees come forward, each story reinforcing the pattern Ethan uncovered. What once felt isolated becomes collective proof. There is no single triumphant moment, only a steady reckoning. Careers are reviewed. Policies rewritten. Trust fractured. The audience feels the weight of accountability here, not as spectacle but as process. And that reality changes everything. With the external battle over, the harder one begins at home. Ethan and Claire sit with the damage between them, resentment that grew quietly, guilt that doesn't dissolve with vindication. They talk honestly for the first time in years, not to fix, but to understand. Claire admits the choices she made to survive, even when they compromised her sense of self. Ethan admits his silence wasn't strength, it was fear of being unnecessary. There are no dramatic apologies, no cinematic forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. Some nights are heavy. Some conversations end unfinished. But they stop pretending love alone heals everything. This reckoning matters because it respects reality. Trauma doesn't disappear when the villain falls. The audience sees a marriage not restored to what it was, but redefined into something more honest. Survival didn't break them, but it did change them. And change demands new rules. The final growth isn't dramatic, it's internal. Ethan learns that strength doesn't need volume. His power was never confrontation. It was patience sharpened into action. He reclaims confidence not by dominating, but by choosing engagement over silence. Claire, meanwhile, rebuilds her ambition on new terms. She understands now that success doesn't require self-erasure, and resilience doesn't mean endurance of harm. She pursues work that aligns with her values, not just her potential. Together, they move forward cautiously, aware of scars but not defined by them. This is empowerment that feels earned because it doesn't deny pain, it integrates it. The audience leaves not with fantasy, but with truth. Healing is uneven, progress is quiet, and justice is rarely perfect. But it is possible. And sometimes, survival becomes the foundation for something stronger. Not because it was easy, but because it was faced honestly. Months later, the world feels smaller and safer. Ethan and Claire live in a modest new apartment, not chosen for status but for peace. Morning light filters through clean windows, touching unpacked boxes and simple furniture. There's no celebration of survival, no victory speeches. Just routine. Claire makes coffee while Ethan fixes a loose cabinet hinge. These ordinary acts matter because they signal stability earned, not assumed. The past hasn't vanished. It's simply no longer in control. They speak more carefully now, listening as much as talking. Silence still exists, but it's chosen, not enforced. The audience senses that healing isn't complete, but it's underway. This quiet ending resists spectacle on purpose. After everything, calm becomes the reward. The absence of fear feels like progress. And for the first time, the future isn't something to endure, it's something they're allowed to imagine again. Claire receives the offer on an ordinary afternoon. No secrecy. No implied debt. Just an email, clearly written, earned through recommendation and work she chose to stand behind. The moment isn't explosive, it's grounding. She reads it twice, then exhales, as if releasing a weight she's carried for years. This offer matters because it comes without conditions, without silence attached. Ethan watches her process it, not as a protector, but as a partner who understands what this costs emotionally. Claire doesn't rush to accept. She considers alignment, values, boundaries. That pause is growth. It shows ambition rebuilt, not abandoned. The audience feels catharsis here, not because Claire wins, but because she chooses. Power is no longer something applied to her, it's something she exercises. This scene reinforces the story's moral. Success without dignity isn't success. And dignity reclaimed is its own form of triumph. The final words don't come during a speech or interview. They arrive quietly, spoken in reflection, meant as truth rather than performance. He thought power meant ownership. I showed him power only works when people stay silent, and we didn't. The line resonates because it reframes the entire story into a single realization. Power was never taken from Victor. It was withdrawn. Silence, once broken, dismantled everything he relied on. Ethan and Claire don't look backward with satisfaction, but with clarity. They understand now that truth doesn't need volume, it needs witnesses. The audience is left reflective, not energized, because this ending isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. About choosing to speak even when the cost is real. The story closes the way it lived, quietly, firmly, honestly. And that honesty becomes the final act of empowerment.